You're not confused. You're in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. So I want to take a moment and I want you to look around the room that you're sitting in. I want you to notice how it feels to be within this space. Let yourself be really present with this moment. Nothing is required of you right now. You don't have to perform. You don't have to understand. You don't have to become. You just need to arrive. So take a moment with me and put a hand on your chest and a hand on your stomach. And I want you to take a deep breath in and out. And a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And one more in and another one out. So I want you to notice the weight of yourself in the chair that you're sitting in. And let yourself be held by the ground, by the chair. What in your life right now feels safe, gentle, supportive? This could be a person, it could be a pet, it could be a memory or a future possibility. I want you to notice how that feels in your body. Now, I want you to imagine turning that feeling into warmth. Let the warmth grow heavy in your chest and expand out through your shoulders, through your arms, and out your fingertips, down through your torso, through your legs, and out the bottom of your feet, and up through your neck and out the top of your head. Notice that warmth and let it completely envelop you. Now, I want you to think about, who am I when I am not performing survival? What version of me feels the most honest and peaceful? That is your true self. If you feel like who you used to be is not working anymore, but who you are becoming has not landed, then this space is meant for you. This can be a very confusing, disorienting, and scary transition. And it's important that you have the right support in place as you move through this transition and the right tools and skills. I have also been through this transition. My name is Crystal Hoban. I used to be a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I was in a private practice for 5 years. I did really well in my private practice. And one day, things just stopped feeling good. My work started to feel exhausting. It started to feel depleting. And I was so confused on what was going on. Why me? Why now? Everything was working until it wasn't. Learning and letting go of the idea that I had made a mistake was a really difficult part of being able to start moving through this transition. I had put all this money and time into becoming this professional, and I had this belief that I was going to do this until I retired, And if it wasn't what I was going to do till I retired, then I wanted too much. When I decided to close my private practice and make the transition, everyone around me thought I had lost my mind because when something is working, why would you change it? And on the external, it looked like it was working, but internally, it was not working for me anymore. It didn't feel like it was working for me anymore. And even though everything outside of me was telling me something different than what I felt within, I needed to learn how to trust myself and trust what I was feeling and trust what I knew. And that felt very difficult because no one else around me understood what I was going through. And I looked crazy to them. But I knew that I was being called in a different direction. And I had to come to terms with the idea that what I had done in my practice wasn't a mistake. It was a building block that was meant to help me build something different. It had served its purpose. It had got me to this point, and it was time for me to take everything that I learned and shift that into something that was more aligned with me at this point because I was growing, I was expanding, and I was changing much faster internally than the external was showing me. And so developing self trust and the confidence to move forward was the biggest challenge for me personally. And that's why I do this work to help others build that and create that internally so that you can step forward into this new identity successfully. And it's so important to have the support in place that you need to feel confident doing so. I had to come to terms with the idea that there's a point in time when healing is done. And now it's time to become. And that is what this masterclass is about. Growth and change comes with grief. And I feel like this is just not talked about enough. It is a normal part of the process. When you are shifting and you are changing and you are growing, grief is bound to surface. And when you are losing the version of yourself that felt safe, that felt accepted, that felt loved, and you're shifting into this unknown version of yourself, there's so much that's up for question. And it's normal to be afraid. It's normal to experience grief because that's your comfort, right? That's where you've always been. That's your comfort zone. So you're stepping outside of that. So, of course, there's fear and grief that comes up with that. And as you shift and grow, you change roles as well. So maybe you've always been the helper, someone who has been the ear for everybody to come and talk to, or is always there to help people if they come for you and they ask you for help. But people are not the same with you in that way. Or you're the strong one. So you put others' needs before your own. Or maybe you're the peacemaker, where you try to avoid conflict, you keep the peace, you're kind of a little bit more silent, more reserved, and you just kind of let things happen in a way, even if it doesn't always feel great to you, right? That often is the strong one too, the peacekeeper. Those can be one and the same. Maybe you're the overachiever, the one who feels like they constantly have to produce and create to be able to prove themselves to themselves as well as others that they are worthy, that they are good enough. Or maybe you're the invisible one, the one who keeps themselves really silent and really doesn't speak up or say anything because they don't want to upset other people or make other people angry or start a conflict because that then means that they may be unsafe, right? These roles are roles that you've maintained to maintain your safety and survive up until this point. But as you grow and you shift and you expand, those roles can't come with you. And even with positive changes, grief is a normal part of the process. So Missing who you used to be doesn't mean that you actually want to go back. That's part of the grief. And with identity grief, there can come feelings of confusion, nostalgia, guilt, emotional exhaustion. Those are all normal emotions and experiences as you are shifting identities, as you are releasing an identity and coming into a new one. And so letting go of certain roles that you've played for probably majority of your life to maintain your safety or to get to this point, brings up a lot of fear of rejection, a lot of fear of abandonment. And there's this fear that if I change, will the people around me still love me? And the truth is that if they are meant to be in your life, they will grow with you. But the people who are not meant to grow with you are the people that are only comfortable in the version of yourself and who you were before. And a lot of the times, that version of who you're walking away from is a smaller version of yourself where you kept yourself very small. And those people benefited from that. So they're only going to be able to engage with that version of you. And so there's this isolation and this fear of rejection and this fear of abandonment that comes up with this shift as well. And I want you to know that you're not broken for feeling grief when it comes to expansion. You are metabolizing a new identity, and this is just part of the process. Often, when we start to shift, our old coping strategies just don't work anymore. So, the ones that once protected us really begin to feel heavy and draining and ineffective because your nervous system no longer wants to function in this place of survival anymore. It's ready to expand into something bigger. So, the overworking, the people pleasing, the perfectionistic tendencies, the emotional suppression, the hyper independence, those things once made you feel safe, but now cause distress and discomfort. And that's partially how you know you're starting to expand and your awareness is starting to grow. Because as your awareness grows, the strategies that you used to use create discomfort rather than relief like they used to, because you're changing. And so you might feel frustrated that these ways of functioning aren't working anymore. And you're not really sure what's next or how to shift these things or even what to embody now moving forward. There's often this gap or this space where the old strategies don't work anymore, but the new ones have not landed yet. And so there's this discomfort that comes up with there not being nothing reliable for you to fall into or to know right away. And so there can be this feeling of wanting to go backwards because you want to go back to the familiarity. You want to go back to the comfort. That's completely normal. Even though you know it's not aligned, we often try to go back into our comfort and because it's comfortable, right? And we avoid discomfort at all costs. We are humans. And that's part of the human condition. And so your coping strategies didn't fail, but they completed their job. They have completed what they came here to complete, and you're expanding beyond them. And this can cause a lot of discomfort. Our nervous system also will start to bring up a lot of fear when it comes to being authentic and true and visible. And this fear can show up in a couple of different ways. So, the fear that often shows up, though, is fear of being misunderstood, fear of rejection, fear of not belonging, fear of being criticized, fear of exposure and feeling too exposed, right? And this will show up as you're overthinking or you're procrastinating or you're being inconsistent. You're not being consistent with your goals or reaching your goals. Maybe you'll experience sudden exhaustion or emotional waves of intensity. And that's information that fear is kind of getting in the way of you moving forward. And there's some nervous system regulation that needs to occur. And so authentic expression removes the protective shields that we had when we were people pleasing, when we were, acting perfect, when we were overproducing. When we stop engaging in those old ways and we start to become more authentic, that protection that those old roles kept for us are removed. So we can feel really vulnerable when it comes to being authentic and true to ourselves. And so you might feel like expansion is danger in your body, and it might feel really dangerous and unsafe before it actually is able to ground into safety. You might feel a push and pull dynamic where you really want to put yourself out there to be seen, but you're feeling really exposed when you do that, or really uncomfortable after doing so. You might experience emotional hangovers when you start to share your truth or you start to step into places of leadership. And they're kind of like these emotional exhaustions right afterwards. And they hit it really hard. It's like a ton of bricks and it will knock you on your butt and make you really tired. And that can also happen when we start to be more authentic and put ourselves out there. And that is part of the nervous system needing an adjustment, needing to be regulated through these ways of showing up, these ways of being visible. Visibility requires capacity, not just confidence. And when I say capacity, I mean nervous system capacity to be able to feel safety while you're showing up, while you're visible. So your fear isn't telling you to stop, it's asking you to feel safe while expanding. It is common to feel isolated during this shift. Like there are people around you that just don't understand what it is that you are going through. And it can feel very lonely. Not so much because you're alone exactly, but more so because your inner world is changing so much faster than your external world. And that can feel really disorienting. You might feel very misunderstood by others without actually doing anything wrong or anyone doing anything wrong. It's just not, you're just not connecting or resonating with them anymore. You may feel like conversations are extremely surface level and don't have depth, and that could be exhausting and draining. You may have grief realizing that some of your relationships only really connected with you because of the version of yourself that you were and that you're not anymore. And so grief comes up associated with those realizations. Discomfort can come up around realizing that you don't want to perform this identity that you used to be anymore. And so it becomes uncomfortable to continue to try to do so just to maintain certain connections that can't actually come into this new identity that you're coming into, or that just don't connect with this new identity that you're stepping into. And so there's often a fear of being seen as different or being seen as too much or being seen as hard to relate to or being seen as too deep or being seen as too intense or too sensitive. All of these things come up, these fears around being seen this way by the people that you used to really be close to or the people that you used to want acceptance from or validation from. And so there's this longing to have a deep connection with people and not wanting to accept the surface level anymore. Loneliness during expansion doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path. It's a normal part of the process, but usually it's an indicator that you're in between energetic communities. So you've outgrown one community, but you haven't exactly found or grounded into the new one yet. And so it can be uncomfortable. This in between phase, often clarity happens here, but embodiment of the clarity that you're receiving feels really unstable. So, what I mean by that is you know what you are becoming and you know what you want to do, but being able to actually embody that and ground in that and follow through with that and create the emotional stability that you need to become that feels more difficult or harder in some ways. And so clarity is very much a cognitive process, right? Where embodiment is much more nervous system paced. So if your nervous system is not feeling safe in with the expansion and safe with the visibility and the changes and the stepping into leadership and the new identity, it's not going to be able to hold the embodiment of who you are becoming. And so you might feel really clear one day on where you're going, how you're getting there, feel really good about it. And then the next day you might feel really doubtful and unsure. And that's a normal part of this process and the nervous system kind of rewiring itself. You might experience emotional waves where even though you have like this really strong awareness of where you're going and what you're doing, these emotional waves might hit you very hard and kind of be ungrounding or disorienting in some ways. You might experience some impatience with how long it is taking you to actually embody this identity that you're wanting and feel like it's not happening fast enough. You might also think that things like the external not showing up consistent means that you're regressing. So not seeing that consistency can feel like you're regressing. And that's a normal part of this process as well because it's not a linear process. It's something that happens in cycles. And so it's not going to completely stabilize all of the sudden. It's something that happens over time in that way. So it will stabilize for 5 minutes, for example, and then you'll go back into that cycle again. And then the next time it will go for 10 minutes, right? It's something that you build off of and on like building blocks. And so there may be moments of deep certainty followed by moments of not really knowing where you're going and if you made the wrong decision and if you're going crazy. And it can feel very confusing. And your identity feels real internally. Like internally, you understand your identity, you're feeling it, but to externalize it and to create the external reality, that's where it can feel really difficult and daunting. And so this phase can often feel very like you're floating, like you're not grounded, like you're disoriented, like you're confused, and it can kind of be an up and down kind of experience in some ways. And so that instability does not mean misalignment. It means that integration is actually happening. And integration just takes time because the nervous system takes time to rewire and to shift and to expand. Often people get stuck in this in between space between identities for long periods of time. And some of the reasons why this happens is because they're trying to think their way into this new identity. And that's only a piece of the puzzle, or they are seeking absolutes or evidence or certainty before they actually take action and actually decide to move forward, which really only causes delays and pushes back their time. They often experience nervous system dysregulation as procrastination. And that needs to be attended to actively for you to be able to re regulate the nervous system and rewire it. A lot of the times, people are second guessing themselves or collapsing back into their old patterns because they haven't been able to develop the self trust and the confidence that they need to take action and move forward. And doing this work, it's really important that you have support and that you're able to reflect on your movement forward and how you're doing so that you can continue to build like building blocks and keep moving forward. Without support and without reflection, it's really difficult to fully embody this new identity that you're feeling called to step into. So now I'd like to take some time and do some exercises. And this is kind of how my course is set up is with the nervous system regulation and then these exercises. And with this exercise, I want you to reflect and think about these questions. So, what identity feels really heavy for you and very limiting right now? How does this version of you think, feel, and move through life? What emotions does this version of you and this identity feel the most? Notice how you're feeling in your body as you're thinking about these questions and settling with these answers. Notice what comes up. If this identity was a protective strategy, what was it trying to keep you safe from? What does this version of yourself fear would happen if you did change? Now, I want you to think about the identity that you are shifting into, that you are imagining for yourself, that you are feeling called to. How does this secure new identity sit? Do they sit up really straight? Do they sit confidently? How do they breathe? Calmly? Slowly? What do they believe about themselves? What decisions would they make this week? And how would they move towards those decisions? Would they hesitate? Would they doubt themselves? Or would they move with full force and power and trust? As you think about this new version of yourself, what emotions come up for you? What do you feel in your body? Where do you feel the expansion? And where do you feel the resistance? Growth is not the absence of fear. It's your nervous system learning that safety happens inside expansion. So while you were practicing that exercise with me, if grief came up, or fear, or resistance, or confusion, or excitement, I just want you to know that that's completely normal. When doing these exercises and reflecting on these changes, it's normal to have a mixture of feelings and to feel things deeply. And I just want you to know that whatever you felt while you were practicing that exercise with me was what you needed to feel. And there's nothing wrong with what came up for you during that process, other than it just needed to come up. And it's absolutely normal to have many different emotions when processing these things. Becoming someone new is not about force, it's about repetition, it's about safety, and it's about creating enough safety and support while your nervous system is learning to adjust. If you are noticing that you are in this identity transition and you're feeling confused, tender, fearful, or lonely, I want you to know that you're not meant to navigate this path alone. That is exactly why I created the Sovereign Self. This is a container that is meant to hold space for who you are becoming. It supports you through the emotional, the nervous system, and the identity shifts that need to happen as you are becoming someone new. This is not meant to force you or to push you. This is meant to hold you as you are integrating this new identity. This is for people who are in the in between but are ready to finally embody that new identity. But they're feeling self doubt, they're hesitating, they're second guessing themselves. This container will provide you with the self trust, the regulation, the clarity, the embodied confidence that you need to move forward successfully. In this container, you will receive coaching, reflections, as well as nervous system work and identity integration skills and tools. If this resonates with you, I would love to support you on your journey. You can apply or reach out through the link below, and we can determine if this is the right fit for you.